I think the fundamentals of strong product development remain the same. I think we've got some accelerants to leverage with AI, but deeply understanding the customer, no change there. High judgment people that are able to work through ambiguity and come out with good decision making, no change there. Having a really driven team that's hungry and ambitious and really believes in what they're working on, no change there. I think the fundamentals, oftentimes, if I have a big life decision to make, I kind of try to restate my values to help guide me on that. And in the tech world, I think some of those fundamentals that are tried and true that make great companies and great products, none of that changes either. So just recalibrating on what you believe those are and really making sure that those stay anchors and you don't kind of lose sight of this or be oh, the AI knows what the customer wants. That's the kind of thing that I think can get companies into trouble. So just not forgetting the fundamentals.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial technology entrepreneur, Amazon bestselling author of the book Fail Hard, Win Big, and CEO of Sonatafy Technology, which is a software delivery partner providing U.S.-led execution supported by Latin America engineering teams. Today, I am joined by Michael Cieri, who has been a product and business leader with over 20 years experience. He's worked at companies like Opendoor, Square, and he's now the EVP of Software at Bill, which is a public company with over a $4.5 billion market cap. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here with you today, Steve.
You bet. Well, give us, if you would, give us the quick overview of what Bill does.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about Bill and all things tech with you today. So Bill's a financial management platform for SMBs. We help SMBs run financial operations, get insight into cash flow, manage their spend as well as money in. So they have a holistic view of how their financial management is working. And ultimately that helps them be more successful as entrepreneurs and small business owners through better financial outcomes.
Awesome. And you've been with Bill just under a year, right?
Yeah, just under a year. Yeah, I joined last May, I think is when I got started. Yeah, so it's been, coming out of the sort of drinking from the fire hose phase and, starting to get some stuff done. So it's good.
Now, you have an amazing background and track record, but I always like to have guests tell our audience how you got your current role. Because last time I checked, even the most talented people in the world, you're not going to just apply on LinkedIn and get a senior executive software role.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. You gave a bit of my bio in the intro. Thank you for that. So I have spent most of my career in engineering or product roles in technology. And the last 15 years or so, the majority of that has been spent serving SMBs. So I spent about 8 years at Square working on software for SMBs and just really fell in love with the customer. I've got some SMB and entrepreneurial roots. My grandfather owned a bowling alley, growing up. And I used to just go hang out at the bowling alley all the time and watch him run the business, which was pretty cool.
I love it.
On the technology side, it's such an underserved customer. And there's obviously been and we could talk about this, but there's been a lot more focus on serving SMBs in the last 15 years. When I first got to Square, there really wasn't a lot of companies out there that were trying to figure out how to bring enterprise level capabilities to small businesses. And I just love that Square was doing that and doing it with a consumer mindset of how do you just make it really easy to use and thinking about small businesses as being more or less consumers where they need faces and simplicity that levels what Facebook was doing and what Twitter was doing. But doing that in the small business arena was just great. So I had a wonderful experience there. I spent some time at Opendoor, as you mentioned. And then most recently, I was chief product officer at Gusto, where I spent nearly 3 years also working on SMB software in the payroll HR arena and had a lovely experience there as well. And so I think the transition to Bill, I think part of it was just having a lot of depth on understanding small businesses and building tech for small businesses, which is a unique thing to do, different than building for larger businesses. And so, one thing kind of led to another there, and that which brought me to Bill.
Did a recruiter reach out to you? Did you know somebody? How did that fall into place?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I had tracked Bill for a long time, just kind of watching the company. when I was at Square, I led Square Invoices, and Square Invoices ultimately got into bill pay. And so we were monitoring companies in the space doing that. And I was just like so impressed with how focused and quick growing Bill was in the accounts payable arena. Kind of, just followed Renee a little bit from afar and like tracked his career and thought he was great. But then how it came together was actually an old colleague of mine from Square, Mary Bauman, who's my counterpart at Bill, as I mentioned to you earlier, leading our payments and financial services unit. She and I worked together at Square. Really loved her. She's excellent at what she does. And she was like, hey, I want to come take a look at this. And she was right. And so I just loved what I saw. And I think one of the things I've learned, Steve, just like working with small businesses, you can build the best sort of products for them in many different arenas, but like cash flow, financial management, just general ability to do excellent things through the finance function, oftentimes is what either makes or breaks small businesses. Like poor financial management leads to a lot of businesses not making it, and strong financial management can help those businesses thrive. So the impact capability that I think Bill has had and can continue to have in this new era was also exciting. And I just like the people. Like Renee is just like a wonderful CEO, and the other executives I've really enjoyed working with, and they're very strong.
So you've always been an industry expert helping the SMB space. You top of your game, but ultimately you had a contact that you worked your network and that led to the opportunity. Is that a fair recap?
Probably fair. Yeah. I mean, a recruiter was involved. They did their job. They were great, very helpful through the process. But yeah, at least in my experience, working in more senior roles, the network is like usually how you start that conversation. You're somehow connected. People want to work with people that are a little bit more vetted, is what I've found, at least in the last few roles I've had. And so just about everyone has been relatively network related, at least how the conversation started.
I agree. I definitely agree. And you got to know someone to get in the door to get past that initial gate. So tell us about some cutting edge projects you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise, Steve, like AI is a big area for us at Bill. Part of the reason I was excited to come to Bill is I think in general, companies that are dealing with workflows, dealing with like things that people are doing day in and day out to get work done, have a really strong edge for how to apply AI, because the opportunity for time savings is just material. And so when you think about what people are doing when they're paying bills or they're sending invoices, they're reconciling, a lot of that work is ripe, I think, for AI to really help not only like speed up the process, but like get to better financial outcomes, making sure that you are managing money out with money in appropriately, making sure there's not any mistakes with like who you're paying. And you see a lot of these invoices coming from vendors, and like it's not necessarily malicious, but somebody might fat finger an extra zero, and that's a problem. So catching that kind of stuff. So we're working really hard at just looking at how do we save a lot of time for customers, through accelerating workflows with the help of AI, and also just getting to better outcomes, like less mistakes, or better management of cash. And we got a lot of fun stuff coming out on that. And so that's been a big area we're attacking.
Awesome. All right. Before the show, we were talking about the biggest challenges you're facing right now. And let's bring that up. The first one you mentioned was something that everybody is dealing with right now, rethinking how you work AI into your company, your products, your systems, your workflows. Let's hear your view on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's probably at this point past the stage of experimenting. Hopefully that's been going on for a while, and are now
I would agree.
coming up with like, how are we deploying this at some scale? And I think the bill curve has been, I would think, similar to most industry curves in that, first off, like we've been, depending on how you define AI, like we've been using machine learning for a long time, going way back in order to assist in our accounts payable product.
I would laugh when you said, how do you define AI? Because we could line up 10 industry leaders and get 10 different answers on that.
Totally. Yeah. I think large language models has really been the big new one in the last few years. And so in some cases, we've been able to replace older ML models with LLMs just to enhance what we're already doing with AI. And then in other cases, there's like net new use cases that we couldn't have done with machine learning, we can do with LLMs, where we can set a goal and kind of like seek to reach that goal through good use of large language models. So, we spent a lot of time experimenting. Every team is kind of doing this. So we can use an agent for that. Or I piped into Gemini for this. We used, GPT for that. And a lot of like individual point successes. And I think one of the things we realized, fairly early was like, this is going to be, especially in a financial operations company where you are dealing with like substantial amounts of workflow. And there is like, again, I think workflow is like such a fertile area for AI that we needed to look at it more holistically, more quickly. And so we kind of went heads down on like, what would an AI platform look like? Like, how would we really ensure that we're piping data in consistently, clean, and accessible to LLMs? How would we build a platform that enables us to have lots of different LLMs that may have, better outcomes or better, compute or something, based off the use case, and we can triangulate on which one is right for what we're trying to get done. And then ultimately unleashing that to when we're building agentic solutions over here or agentic solutions over here, it's all on this shared platform. So we're not getting like totally different outcomes or using different data, et cetera, et cetera. Because part of our value proposition to customers is that we're consistent. I mean, when you join Bill, you're joining a platform so that when you're using multiple products, it's all kind of coming together consistently. Invested quite a bit on sort of going from a decentralized A model to a centralized A model with a shared platform. And now we're starting to reap some of the benefit of that, because like the speed at which we're bringing AI innovation out is accelerating. We've got a lot of things kind of coming in the second half of our fiscal year, first half of this calendar year, that I'm excited about. And just watching not only the speed of innovation, but the consistency and the strength of results kind of because of this platform is really, really energizing. So that's how we've approached. I don't know if that's the right, you kind of zoom out, if that's the right move for everybody. I think in our area, just because we are so
I don't think there's a right move for everybody in this environment.
Yeah, totally. But I think in a multi-product ecosystem where lots of the products are workflow based, it's a good model. And so that's kind of more abstractly how I think about Bill and why I think this is going to work for us.
There was an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal on how Apple has formally come out publicly that they are not going to create their own LLM for Siri, and that they are saying LLMs have become commoditized. There's no reason for them, one of the biggest companies on the planet, to do their own. And for at least as it relates to Siri, they announced they're building it out to be interchangeable with multiple LLMs as opposed to doing their own.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting take, because there hasn't been many large tech companies that have just come out and said, I don't need to do it, I could just use others. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting too. I mean, obviously I'm just opining now with you on stuff going on. But yeah, Apple, I'm just like, where's the Apple intelligence? Like, we've been talking about it for so long. I'm a little surprised a company at that scale doesn't feel the need to have some hands-on ownership of an LLM. And I have no idea what went on there, but I'm just kind of expected it a long time ago that they would have models.
No doubt. They're a behemoth.
And so it's, I think as we look back, it's going to be an interesting moment to consider, are they making the right choice? Doing what you're saying. I think for a smaller company that's leveraging AI to get things done for customers, I might put Bill in that category. Like, we shouldn't build our own LLMs. Like, I think the approach Apple's taking is the right approach for companies like Bill that are
everybody but the top 5 or 10 tech companies, right?
Just, I don't know. I wonder. It'll be interesting to watch.
This might be their way of saying we keep failing, and at least for right now, this is our strategy until we can get our own working.
Yeah, it seems like if you take the glass half full view on how much disruption AI, and disruption is the wrong word, but just like furthering AI is going to provide society, and how many tentacles Apple has into society, the fact that they wouldn't own some of the intelligence there and be able to manipulate it in a way that's like right for their customers and their use cases. Yeah, at a high level, that strikes me as odd, but like, we're going to see, it's going to be fun to watch.
No doubt. So I love your comment earlier that everybody is, for the most part, past the initial experimental phase of AI and focused on building it out at scale. You mentioned before the show that a big part of your focus was how to make sure to harness the power of AI to increase velocity. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
There are some areas in a technology company where you think about internal productivity, where there's already been great products, great tooling, great workflow that's accelerated internal productivity. So like prototyping for product managers, front end coding for designers, ability to really quickly sort of like get a whole bunch of information on the customer through Gong or through other methods to be able to really quickly synthesize like what are customer pain points that we need to go solve. A lot of those are in, obviously in engineering, there's a ton. A lot of those are in product development functions that work alongside engineering to build great solutions. But we're starting to look at like, I think it's a little less clear outside of R&D, like how to continuously get AI productivity gains and how are we doing that at scale? That's where I think we've had some breakthroughs experimentally on things, but we're trying to take a deeper look at like on the product side, we've got this AI platform. We're building lots of agents. That seems to be working internally. Is there a corollary there? Or is it something else? And so that's a little bit more, a little Wild West. But yeah, I do think like just helping everybody be able to get more done, be able to take on more scope, be able to have more impact, particularly outside of the R&D function, is an area that we're thinking a lot about.
What drives me nuts is even the best of AI tools might get you 70 to 80% there on solving an issue. And you're like, if only I had this, and then someone else next version has it. And sometimes it's hard to not be a land grab or a kid in the candy store. I got to go to that. I got to go to that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's as I've gotten kind of older or whatever, like I value judgment and try to screen for judgment more on people. And that vector's just gone up because I'm like, the work does itself. But to your point, like in a lot of tasks now, you probably get 70% of the way there if you just know how to write some prompts. But then like, is that a good response? How would I try and a response with a different response? What does my own head tell me on like what we should be doing based, versus what the model fed me? And yeah, high judgment people, need to sit on top of this stuff to make it work.
So a company like yours that deals with tens of thousands, if not more, SMB clients. SMB clients are unique, and each sector, each niche, each location can have different challenges. Even at a $4.5 billion market cap of your company, how do you harness where to focus on solving those challenges?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think that's like both the exciting part and also the hardest part of serving the SMB market is, you look at it from just a unit count standpoint, you're like, oh man, there's millions and millions and millions. Like it's such a big market. And when you look at it from a spend standpoint, it's also a big market, but like under the hood, so many different ways to slice an SMB market, so many different needs SMBs have, either by size of the company or what vertical they're in or, what geography they're in. And so it's difficult, to know how to like, sort of thread the needle on like, this is something worth building. It's not, it's not super, especially when we're trying to serve millions of SMBs, which is Bill's ambition, how to not be too niche with something. But at the same time, knowing that in some cases, niche is needed in order to make a good solution. So we talk a lot about, who's our ideal customer, what do they look like broadly? We have, I think, very wisely centered on one part of what I would call the SMB stack. Like if you think about all the things an SMB needs, they need to get customers, they need to manage their team, they need to manage their finances. There's various other parts of the stack. You see some SMB ecosystem companies out there that are trying to do it all. And I think Bill has done a good job of saying, we're really on the financial management stack. We're trying to do that excellently. And within financial management, it's not homogenous, but it's a little bit more common needs, I would say, than some of the other parts of the SMB stack are based off customers. So like paying bills, managing employee expense. Some of these, it might look a little different here and there, but a lot of it has a lot of common jobs to be done that are shared across many, many types of customers. So we try hard to make sure we're excellent at those. And then we are thoughtful about specific ones that we might need to do because of a customer size or because of a customer industry or something like that, so that we are kind of serving those types of customers as well with form-fitted solutions where necessary, knowing we can't sort of do it all. And
That's a big elephant to bite. You can only go one bite at a time, right?
totally 100%.
Well, Michael, as a guy with over 20 years experience at some of the top companies in the financial space, what's a brutal lesson that you know now that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
I mean, I can give you a couple screw ups from my days at Square. Hopefully, they're enough in the past that it's okay to share here. We had, I think, one is just being really careful with pricing changes and how you think about framing pricing changes. I think what common sense might tell you is, hey, as we add more value, we can charge more for that value so that there's an equal sort of value exchange for customers. And so if you take that a layer deeper, what that might tell you is like, hey, when we do a big feature launch, that's a good opportunity for us to, increase the price on something. And I got bit on this horribly on our Square Invoices product in the early days where we built, and it kind of gets back to your last question, we built some pretty complex functionality that was very, very needed for a part of the customers that we serve. Not all of them, but like a pretty important segment really needed that. For them, that's great. We rolled out a pricing change along with that. We're like, hey, we did this thing, product's better, price is going from X to Y. And all the people that didn't need that thing just blew up. And they were just like, what the hell? Don't need that. Not important. And we had a little bit of a mutiny on our hands. I mean, I remember sitting down with our marketing leader at the time, just like, we are in trouble. I was going to get so many phone calls because there's also, as you might expect in the SMB market, high price sensitivity. So being really careful on not pegging price increases to like very specific things was a pretty tough lesson at the time. We were in the hot seat for a while off that. Second one I might be able to tell you, and this is nice because I think it has rotated now and is now a success story, but it almost didn't make it. Square Appointments was a product that Square had done amazingly well with the little white reader to take credit cards, like Unlocked, farmers markets, coffee shops, all these businesses that just didn't take credit cards previously. I know it feels like ancient history to say that, but they just didn't take them, and did that with this very simple, elegant product that, per what we were just talking about, like massive, homogenous need. Everybody needed it. Kind of didn't matter if you were small enough, didn't matter what you were selling, you wanted to take credit cards. So that was great. But that took us so far. Eventually it was like, look, like people need more than that, particularly in like what industry they're in. They might have specific workflows. Like that's not going to scale everywhere. And so Square Appointments was an acquisition to try to do better in the service market, which is the biggest SMB market, and particularly within the services market with companies that ran on appointment. So massage therapists, hairstylists, lawyers, anyone that like is running in blocks of time. And when we launched Square Appointments, we weren't really clear on who we were focused on. It was a very general appointment booking platform. You could take payments through it and stuff like that, but it was not, we didn't really have a crisp idea on who we were trying to solve for. And as a result, it was just a very mediocre launch. Like we didn't get a lot of, we had a ton of these businesses on Square and we were like, well, look how many services businesses there are. They should adopt this thing. And it just wasn't happening. And so that was a moment where I think a lot of the kind of the rubber hit the road for me. And you read this in a lot of startup books. I'm like, you got to get like super crisp, especially if you're struggling, on who the target customer is, and go from like, if your ambitions are this, you got to go down to like this for like what the focus is. And so we beat ourselves up. We had a lot of tough meetings, got dragged through the mud and some business reviews, and finally said, okay, how are we going to turn this around? And we zeroed in on a super small customer to focus on, which at the time was independent hairstylists so these are folks who are working maybe in a salon or a barbershop, but they aren't employed by the shop. They are renting a chair in the shop. And we were like, we're going to make this product work for them. And that is not at the Square level of ambition. Square is like a multi-billion-dollar product at the time. So I remember articulating this to leadership, and they're like, why would we spend so much time getting that right? And I was like, well, if we get that right, then we can expand to this, expand to this, expand to this. And so they gave us a little bit of time. I think me and my coworkers, we must have interviewed probably 150 of these folks. Just every day we were talking to independent hairstylists, trying to figure out how to make the product work for them. And we eventually did. And then we were eventually able to scale it out. And I think now it's like I believe it's the largest appointment booking platform on the planet. But at the time, it was almost killed because we didn't get the customer targeted right.
That's a great lesson. That's
Yeah.
a great lesson. All right. So here we are, 2026. What's the biggest business or technical outcome that you're focused on this year?
I think really just automating finance and helping small businesses realize the impact that AI can have on financial management, I would say is number one for us.
Gotcha. What's the hardest part of doing that? What's slowing you down or standing in your way or obstacles you need to overcome to achieve that?
There's a few. Some of them are internal, some are external. So I think having AI sort of summarize your meeting notes is helpful and low risk. Having AI potentially move money on your behalf is high value, could be perceived as high risk. And so making sure that we do that very well with considerable care, and we take customers along the journey to get there and prove that we can help in that way, is something that's going to take time and curation. And so we're starting with less money movement, but more workflow related agentic experiences to sort of prove out that we can add a lot of value, but not yet kind of like moving money. And so an example of this is we launched a W-9 agent, which I'm sure you're familiar with W-9s, but if you have somebody you're working with, you got to do a 1099 for them eventually. You need a W-9 as the input to do that 1099. Gathering that is a pain. It's a lot of back and forth emails, like, hey, can you send me this information, blah, blah, blah. And so we have an agent that does that. There's no money movement on that, but it's a massive time savings for customers. So we're focusing on getting these things out and then getting to a place where we're able to help better manage cash flow and potentially be able to move money agentically. But it's both a technical challenge, and like we have to do that with super high quality, and also a trust kind of thing with customers to get folks comfortable with the idea of that. So yeah, working through that.
With your target market being SMBs, I'm going to make a broad assumption and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're probably not the most technical people. It could be challenging getting them to trust some of the power AI can bring and the accuracy. Is that fair?
100%. I think that's a good way to put it. Obviously, there's a big scale here, and we work with businesses at Bill that are more complex and a little bit further along than my time at Square, which was really micro businesses, many individuals, frankly. Bill's businesses are a little bit larger, so I think there's a little bit more. If you think about it as a sliding scale, I think most of Bill's customers are a bit more open to it, know they need it. And another big segment for us are accountants. We work with accounting firms across the country to help them speed up their operations. And they're very savvy and hungry for utilizing AI. Oftentimes, the adoption curve isn't so much as the tech or product there, but like, are people ready to trust it and ready to adopt? And with Bill, we've been at this for 20 years. We have a great track record of being the champion of SMBs. So I think there's a strong brand there, and that gives us a really great tailwind to be able to step into this new territory with our customers. And we take it very seriously, to make sure that we, again, like accuracy and everything is like rock solid on anything that might involve sensitive financial activity. But yeah, some of it is kind of winning the trust of SMBs to be open to that.
And you do have the benefit of a global brand that people trust. So you definitely get that head start over anyone else startups trying to compete with you.
Totally. I think that is an intangible benefit of being a public company, regulated, licensed in all 50 states, been at it for 20 years. If I'm a coffee shop chain, and I know I have to speed up and improve my financial operations, I'm going to go with a company like Bill rather than like a Series B startup, because I know they've been there, they've done that, and they're going to continue to be there and do that because we're here for the long run. So I expect that'll be a tailwind for us.
Michael, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. I love how you chose your niche in your career. You're an industry expert in that space. You're now EVP of Software of a $4.5 billion market cap company. Congrats to you. Thanks for sharing the lessons learned here. Before we wrap, give our listeners some advice, tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these interesting times. What's your straightforward, no bullshit advice?
I think the fundamentals of strong product development remain the same. I think we've got some accelerants to leverage with AI, but like deeply understanding the customer, no change there. High judgment people that are able to work through ambiguity and come out with good decision making, no change there. Having a really driven team that's like hungry and ambitious and like really believes in what they're working on, no change there. So I think the fundamentals oftentimes, like if I have a big life decision to make, I like kind of try to restate my values to help guide me on that. And in the tech world, I think some of those fundamentals that, are tried and true that make great companies and great products, none of that changes either. So just recalibrating on what you believe those are, and really making sure that those stay anchors and we don't kind of lose sight of this or like, be like, oh, the AI knows what the customer wants. That's the kind of thing that I think can get companies into trouble. So just not forgetting the fundamentals.
Great advice. Thanks again, Michael. We appreciate it. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatafy Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.